Bucky has been a solid DPS pick in Marvel Rivals ever since the game has come out, and his utility still makes him a great hero even if he is a bit weak in the current meta. My name is Paz, an Eternity player on the competitive ladder, and I'm going to tell you all of the things you need to know in order to pop off and carry your ranked games. Starting things off, understand that Bucky is a strong bruiser DPS that likes to set up his front line for success. Much like Wolverine, he plans to displace enemies with his hook, mainly the tanks, to set up more advantageous fights for the rest of his team around the fight. Bucky does not want to play like Psylocke or other dive heroes that want to constantly be taking off angles and pressure DPS or find picks throughout the fight. While Bucky can off angle occasionally, it isn't what he should actively be searching to do all of the time. While playing in the front line, Bucky also does an excellent job at peeling for the back line against divers like Black Panther too, since he can just dash them out of the way and slow them down, stopping everything that they're trying to do. Play Bucky in the front line, pressure tanks, and find picks, and you'll be on your way to carrying on the character. Starting off with his primary fire blaster, the Roterstern, I don't know, Bucky fires 3 straight line projectiles that explode on impact. The blaster is not hit scan, meaning you'll have to lead your shots a bit at longer ranges. They do travel pretty fast though. Each shot does 75 damage if you hit the target directly, and then the explosion deals 65 damage. Headshots deal 150 damage then, enough to 2-tap any squishy. The explosion damage hits any target within a 5-meter cone of the target that you hit. I know it sounds hard to kind of understand, but just try to visualize it with this clip on screen, and when you see it, it's kind of overpowered, to be honest. It is important to note though that if a target does get hit directly, they do not take that extra explosion damage. 140 damage a shot to the body would be a little crazy, y'all. Rounding out our understanding of the blaster, fall off begins from 20 meters away and maxes out at 40 meters, dealing 60% of normal damage, in this case 45 damage per body shot. When first picking up Bucky, you might feel like, man, I have to reload a lot. I mean, I only got 3 shots. This sucks, but that is really not the case. The reload itself isn't actually all that long, but also if you use any, and I mean any of Bucky's abilities, you will get all of your shots refunded whether or not you hit that ability, doesn't matter. Because of this, you can actually set up some pretty nasty combos. For example, a headshot with a dash into a melee is enough to one-shot a squishy character with 250 HP. If you hook targets in, all you have to do is hit the headshot and dash for the same effect, and that will actually one-shot 275 HP targets too. This feels nearly instant, and there's really not a lot that the enemy can do if they aren't expecting it. Because of the way Bucky's gun feels, he is typically played almost like a tank, like Roadhog from Overwatch, for example, that tries to play to hook enemies in and blast them down with his blaster from close range. This is because the blaster fires projectiles, but also because of his passives that give him bonus health for every time he uses an ability, which is absolutely insane. Taking off angles is usually done by other duelists on the team, like Hellas, Psylocke, you get the idea. And because he can do such great AoE damage with that conal radius that we were talking about earlier, you can kind of see why we're saying, yeah, play this guy in the front line a little bit. Let's talk a little bit more about that passive that we were just discussing though, Ceaseless Charge, since it's going to help us understand a lot more of how we want to play Bucky's kits. Whenever Bucky uses his team up with Captain America, he is granted 30 bonus health. Whenever Bucky uses his hook or energy ball abilities, he is granted 40 bonus health. And finally, whenever Bucky dashes or uses his ultimate, he is granted 50 bonus health. This bonus health fades over time though, but it is still pretty useful. This means in theory, Bucky can generate 90 bonus health with a hook dash combo and 130 if he throws in an energy ball into the exchange as well. This puts Bucky at 380 HP, which is absolutely insane, making him an insane frontline bruiser. Now, you never want to really use these abilities just to get more shields, but it is a nice thing to know that is happening in the background so you can be a little bit more aggressive if you want to be. Let's begin delving into Bucky's abilities though, starting with his Bionic hook. Every 12 seconds, Bucky can charge a hook for up to 4 seconds that travels further the longer it is held. After half of a second, the hook travels 10 meters forward before it hits someone. After 1 full second, the hook travels for 20 meters forward before it hits someone. This is as far as you can charge it for, and the little meter on the right side of the reticle is is going to tell you when you're about to be full charge. Once you do hit full charge, it's going to make a very loud buckle sound, so the enemies are going to know that you're ready to hook. What's really neat about this ability though is how it hooks onto enemies. Whether or not you hit the hook is dependent on a similar cone radius as your blaster that we were just talking about before. This means it's really forgiving to hit a hook on a single target, but also that you can hook 2 or more people at once if you place the hook right. For example, if I hook a target and there's another person behind them in that 4.5 meter radius, they're actually going to get hooked in with the initial person I hooked, giving me 2 free picks instead of just 1. It is also important to note that you can displace enemies that you hook after you hook them by moving your crosshair to where you want them to end up. If you hit the hook and then immediately whip around, you can then dash them into your team and possibly bring them behind cover or a shield so they can't get saved by their supports. You're cutting off line of sight from their team. They can't even get bubble from Magneto either. The hook is also Bucky's main tool to fish for value in fights that last for a pretty long time, and in Marvel Rivals, newsflash, with how busted support ultimates are, fights pretty often do go for a pretty long time. A super high impact play you can go for on Bucky is to hook a cloak and dagger out of her ultimate and then focus her down with your team to instantly take her out and win the fight. This plan won't work all of the time, especially if they started in cloak form to dodge you after you hook them, but it is a pretty nice idea to understand if you want to go for some high value picks. Speaking of countering ultimates, the hook is also very good at that just in general. Since it applies a micro stun, you can even cancel ultimates like Doctor Strange very easily if you are looking for it, as well as things like Star-Lord, Loki, pretty much anyone if you time it right, although some are more difficult than others. My main tip for hitting more hooks is to try to pressure enemy shields early in the fight and then charge your hook right when the shield is about to break. This way, when your team does that extra little bit of damage that you need, you can immediately follow that up with a hook and instantly take out the enemy. It feels horrible to play Vanguard into this. Enough talk about the hook though, let's talk about Bucky's dash, Trooper's Fist. Upon pressing shift by default, Bucky will send himself forward once every 12 seconds, pulling and pushing any enemy around him forward. The target he initially seizes takes 25 damage, and anyone affected by the knockback after that is going to incur 65 points of damage. So that single target we hit is going to take 90 damage in total. The dash, much like Emma's chokeslam, works through shields, including both Doctor Strange's and Magneto's shield, making it an excellent tool to finish off tanks if need be. You need to be careful when using it this way though, since you are going to be very vulnerable if you just dash through the front line. After all, the tank is probably going to be that frontline presence, and everyone else is just going to shoot you since they're just going to see the guy getting dashed on. Instead, this ability is an excellent tool to deal damage on top of adding additional movement and crowd control capabilities to Bucky's kit. Need to take high ground? It's just a dash away. Need to stop Luna from ulting just a little bit longer? Dash her into the wall. Need to take care of a pesky Black Panther in the back line? Dash to make him stand still and he's toast. The dash is a very simple ability, but the true skill comes out of setting up combos with it in conjunction with his blaster and hook like we were talking about earlier. The ability that is going to set you up early on in fights though is your Tainted Voltage that pierces through enemies, dealing 55 damage to anyone it hits while also slowing them down by 35% for 2 seconds. Contrary to his other abilities that are on a 12-second cooldown, his energy ball is on a 6-second cooldown, and you get 2 of them, making it an excellent tool to poke at enemies, as well as a tool to reload your blasters while you are waiting for opportunities and pressuring enemies early on in the fight. This ability can also knock down flying heroes like Iron Man and Storm that see tons of play in the current meta. In my opinion, the Punisher and Hela are still better options against flyers, but if you don't play those heroes or don't care to learn them, this is still a pretty good option to take out flyers with Bucky. You want to make sure though that you aren't just throwing energy balls around whenever you want to though. While you should use them frequently, you really don't want these abilities to get blocked. Instead, you want to try and anticipate when that shield is going to be dropping and then look to slow the enemy team to set yourself up for an easier hook, ultimate, pick anything. Outside of timing, oddly enough, hitting the ability can actually be pretty hard sometimes. The energy ball travels slightly faster than your hook, but it also travels significantly slower than your blaster, so it's kind of a weird projectile to get used to. Getting used to aiming this with everything else in your kit is gonna take some time, so just understand that and give yourself some grace. Use the ball to close the distance on enemies from range so you can get smacking and blasting like you really want to. Before we move on to Bucky's ultimate, we need to discuss his team up ability with Captain America, Stellar Impact. Bound to C by default, Bucky can fly to Captain America and collide with his shield, dealing damage to all enemies in a radius around both of them every 15 seconds. Recall that the bash also gives Bucky an additional 30 health, which is nice if he is getting pressured by a ton of divers. I do honestly think that this team up is pretty solid, but the only problem is that these two characters really don't have any synergy whatsoever. Captain America wants to live in the enemy backline, while Bucky wants to sit with his tanks and just farm damage and possibly hit a big hook. Perhaps I have yet to find the true sauce behind this team up, but Rocket complemented with Bucky was much better in my opinion, and the only time I ever really see this team up being nice for Bucky is maybe if he needs to finish someone off when he gets a big ults, but even then, an amplifier would be nice from Rocket anyways, so take it as you will. All right, but now that we have finally discussed all of Bucky's basic kit, it's time to talk about his ultimate again. I mean, Kraken Impact. It's called Kraken Impact, not again. Upon casting the ultimate, Bucky will send himself up into the air, where he will then be able to designate his impact location on the ground. If he does not pick a location by the time he touches the ground, the ultimate will just be slammed on the ground and no charge will be refunded. You'll just be out of an ultimate. Targets impacted will incur 80 damage and will also receive a culling debuff that lasts for about 5 seconds. This debuff will eliminate enemies immediately if the red part on their health bar is all that is left. In specific, that red bar equates to 15% of the target's maximum health. If the target is eliminated before that culling debuff fades away after 5 seconds, Bucky will get another charge of his ultimate, where he can go again. Okay, good. That was the last time, I promise, but you gotta give me some slack. Like, that's his whole thing. When this occurs, Bucky has 8 seconds before he misses out and has to go back to farming his ult again. Let's start getting into the complicated math of this ultimate. First, understand that your goal is not to light up the kill feed on this ultimate, oddly enough. Your goal is to win the fight by any means necessary. So diving into the entire enemy team just to die is not a good idea. You have to be strategic with his ultimate. Obviously, you want to hit as many targets as possible to spread out that debuff to as many enemies as possible. However, if you see a target like a Luna Snow or Loki clone out of position, you can go for those first to get a pick and then snowball your value furthermore. This doesn't happen all of the time, but it's nice if you read the situation correctly. It is important to note that hitting tanks is technically more valuable than hitting squishies with this ultimate. This is because 15% on a tank's health bar equates to a much larger number than if it was done on a squishy. Here's the catch though. If you are going to hit a tank, you have to trust that you and your team are going to be able to follow up on that damage within 5 seconds, or else your ultimate is cooked. And if they have supports, chances are you're not going to be hitting that threshold very quickly at all, let alone 5 seconds. Honestly, this ultimate is super situational and you aren't going to be perfect after watching just one guide. It is going to take watching good players and practice to really get it down, which I'm going to be doing because I'm going to be streaming a Bronze to GM on Bucky right now. So if you are specifically struggling with this cooldown, maybe it's worth checking that out. Ultimates that combo very nicely with Bucky's ultimate are Groot's, for example, since it pulls the enemies together for you to just go to town and farm. A support ultimate is your worst nightmare when using Bucky ult though. When you know that the enemy supports have ultimates online, do your best to avoid starting the fight with your ultimate on Bucky unless the enemies are out of position, and instead try to focus the target that has ult with your own standalone kit. This way, they might get scared and just use an ult, allowing you to pop off with your ult later. Hooking a Luna Snow who has ult is almost always going to result in a positive value trade for you on Bucky. If you are going to take one tip away from this portion of the guide, or let alone this video to be honest, just make sure that while hitting a big fat ult feels so good, it is infinitely more impactful for you to just get one pick and then just live. It is very easy in this game to do too much and die for it. Make sure that you don't overstep your limit and only keep going when the opportunity presents itself. All right, but now that we have discussed all of Bucky's abilities, let's start talking about what counters him. In the current season, Bucky really struggles into characters like Emma and Magneto. Against these characters, Bucky always has shields in his face, and their shields don't go down easy either, making it impossible to find a hook. And if you do find a hook, Magneto is just gonna bubble it, and against Emma, she's just gonna put her shield up the moment she hears that buckle off of your hook, or she's just gonna be in diamond form and beat you up. So, good luck. That's all I can really give you for those characters. The Thing is no better since he can't get tossed around either by your kit, it's just annoying. As far as DPS go, Hela is really annoying since she thrives at long ranges where you don't as much. Flyers are also pretty annoying if they are good since they will always play in cover and dodge your energy balls, making it impossible to catch them out. Supports do not have any interactions to note though, other than Ultron for the same reason as the other flyers, and also just support alts, but that really just goes for the whole role. As far as who you want to play with as Bucky, obviously shields like Strange, Emma, and Mag are good for you. Groot is also absolutely incredible since he can wall off every single one of your hooks and make it the most free pick of your life. Penny is just funny since you can hook enemies into her mines and just insta-nuke them. I don't think this is good, it's just funny, and you always have the Cap team up too, but the other tanks are just so much better, at least right now, so maybe that'll change in the future. As far as the other DPS go, Storm used to pair super well with Bucky, but in my opinion, the Punisher has currently been taking that spot over him since he provides just so much more pressure overall. This doesn't mean Bucky is necessarily bad here, he's just not the best pick. Bucky is also really solid with a Punisher next to him since he can just obliterate the enemy front line very easily. Supports are simple and the same in every single guide for the past 6 months. Luna and Loki are the best and will remain that way for every single character until there is a specific team up. Cloak and Dagger can get her ultimate faster, but that is like the only thing that she has over the big two when they are not banned. Matchups that Bucky likes to play into are tanks that do not have shields like Penny, Thor, and Hulk, although he does have bubbles, which makes him a little bit more annoying. This is because it is super easy to hook all of these characters and just blow them up as a result. DPS Bucky doesn't mind to play into are divers like Black Panther and even Psylocke because the extra shields he gets from his passive makes him a wall that can't be dealt with. Finally, for supports, he gets resets off of Loki, so it's not a bad matchup there either. It isn't going to make the Loki switch off right away because he still really can just outplay you, but it's a nice little added bonus. Now that we understand Bucky and his kit, as well as where he is applicable, let's take a look at a couple of VODs to get a better understanding of his kit. All right, y'all, so for the first VOD, again, I'm going to try to be a little quieter because I'm recording late at night again, but we're going to be looking at Delta. I didn't get any pro players for this one because really no one's playing Bucky in the pro scene, but I did find him, Delta, who is a one above all Bucky right now, and he's in a pretty high level lobby. I mean, we got Bizor, we got Melophobia, that's Nemesis, and I believe Nightmare, and on the other side, we got Fidel, who I know plays for Shroud's team, and Very Sticky, who's a good Spider-Man, but Spider-Man isn't super good right now. I just wanted to show you guys how Delta is really playing this, and it's a lot about really what we were talking about with the guide, using his energy balls to try to get as much ultimate charge as possible, and just look at how close he plays with his Magneto. He's not really flanking as much. Really, that's what Melo's going to be doing on the Psylocke. He's going to be trying to look for off angles when the fight presents itself on this map. They have to wait a little bit. But Delta is almost playing right next to the mag because that's where the hook is going to get the most value, because then the mag is going to be able to immediately cut off healing with whoever he gets. And it's just super easy for him to have that nice little back and forth relationship with his tanks. So the moment he gets his first pick, he can just go right in right away and start to just farm. There was another play that's coming up here soon though, and specifically with his dash that I wanted to show you guys. It might be a little bit like a couple of a fight or two, but he makes a crazy play if he had dash during that time, that he's almost playing Bucky like a little bit of a Wolverine like we were talking about too, where he can pull tanks in on these tight chokes to make some pretty crazy plays. And I'm pretty sure it's coming up here relatively soon. Again, super easy pick right there, but watch how he walks in here. And I think he meant to try to go for a dash in on this Magneto. Now, he didn't have it, but it's something that I didn't say in the guide that I think you can really do in these fights where you are up a pick and your team is pushing forward. Because Bucky gets so much health, you are able to pretty much pull in tanks like this, and it's a lot safer than if you flip it the other way and try to push through the tank. So overall, I think Delta's doing a really good job of just playing in the front line and being a very active presence in every single fight that has happened so far, and it's why his team is doing so well. All right, so the next thing that I want to talk about with you guys is really just the way that a one above all Bucky is going to use his ultimate. As you can see, Bizor almost has the amplifier. The amplifier goes down from Bizor, and now immediately Delta's going to go for the Armed and Dangerous, the Slam, the Kraken Impact. But look, even though he can't find anyone there and they just kite the ult, watch how he doesn't go in too far. If he knows that he's not going to be able to get a pick here, he's not going to go in and just eliminate himself for no reason. He's going to be like, oh, we almost got that mag, but that's fine. I'm just going to play back and immediately get back to trying to farm my ultimate as fast as humanly possible. Then, yes, we can go in with all these different ults, but notice just the patience that this player has that I feel like a lot of Buckies at lower levels just don't have, and that's why so many people struggle. DPS in this game, at least in the current meta, is all a war of attrition. It is about living as long as possible and creating value for your team as long as possible as well. For this third VOD, I want to talk about how Delta is really playing against the Luna ult. And something that's really interesting with Bucky is that unlike other DPS, he actually has something to do when the Luna ults. You can see he already has all here, so there's really no need for him to shoot. So he's just going to go behind cover, and he's going to charge the hook. Now, he's not going to find anything, but imagine if he catches that mag there. Then the mag is out of the Luna ult, and they probably find a pick on that. Other DPS, unless you were a Hawkeye or a damage-boosted Black Widow, don't really have a whole lot to do right there. And it's just something that you can do a lot in the character. Now, obviously, he's going to die here, and he probably overextended. He could maybe have played a little bit better there, but the fact that you can hook people out of support ults is actually kind of crazy, and is something that I didn't really think to put in the guide. So make sure you're looking for that. So this video, we're going to do a bonus VOD because I feel like we haven't really been talking about too many things. But as always, you can see Bucky's just bullying the tanks in the front line with help from the rest of his team. But the way that he uses his ultimate is actually really interesting. You can also use the ultimate to peel for your backline against divers after they use cooldowns. And this will get you a free pick. It'll save your supports, and it will also allow you to just keep going again and again and again. Now, I know in this fight, we didn't really get to see it pop off, but I think that's a really interesting way to use the ability that forces you to stay safe and also probably nets you a pretty free pick. Now, the other thing too is that this is overtime, so obviously this could influence this situation a bit, but it's even if it's not necessarily correct all the time, it's a really interesting play that keeps people alive and just keeps the fight going in a way I didn't think about before. Like, imagine if Spider-Man goes for an ult there, he's like half health, and then you Bucky ult, you guys kill all of that, and now you get to counter the enemy team with your Bucky ult, and you didn't even need to use a support ult. Like, that's actually pretty big value that I'm definitely going to be looking to do in my own games. I don't know anything about Delta. I don't know if he has a Twitch or anything, but he is one above all Bucky. You can see him on the leaderboard right now. Honestly, I've learned a lot from this guy, and I hope you guys enjoyed today's guide. And that closes out today's guide for Bucky and Marvel Rivals. If you have any questions, make sure to send them in the comments down below, as well as asking me live right now here on YouTube or on Twitch at twitch.tv/PazSwagger. I stream every day I upload, so be sure to check me out to learn more about everything we've talked about today. Thank you guys all so much for watching, but until next time, I've got to peace out and Paz out. I'll see you in the next one.